Energy Transition, episode number 79. Our topic today is Exxon predictions for energy. Good morning to our audience. Irina, Temi, David, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Hello.
The American company published a report that makes predictions about energy. And some newspapers extracted headlines on the subject. Please let me uh, share with you all. ExxonMobil says oil isn't going away and the world won't meet its climate goals. Oh, fossil fuels investments need in decades to come. And the third one, Exxon's predictions for 2050. Oil and gas continue to dominate, climate goals at risk.
The horror.
Uh, okay, David, please, your impressions about Exxon says 65% of primary energy, not electricity, primary, will be provided by fossil fuels in 2050. Why
Yeah.
65? And did you tell to Mr. Birol and Gutierrez about that?
Well, I think that's an interesting finding. Frankly, it's probably a little low. I the way things are going. But they run these models, and that's the number that the casino, what do they call it, the casino scenario spit out, and in their base case. And it's just a guess. If I had to guess, I'd probably say it'd be more like 75. This past year was 80% provided by oil, gas, and coal. So it is projecting a reduction and over the next 27 years in the amount that coal and oil and gas provide as a percentage. But, it's still projecting a 20% increase in demand for natural gas over that period of time. And that's going to be mainly for power generation to displace coal. It is projecting a reduction in coal usage and a net reduction in demand for crude oil over that same period, but a 20% increase in natural gas. And obviously, Mr. Birol will not be happy with that. It's definitely not in line with the findings at the IEA and other environmental, energy transition promoting organizations. But it is what it is. ExxonMobil produces this outlook every year. It's well respected, just like the one BP used to do, but has now been turned over to a consortium. And it's something that's read and referred to by experts all over the world, and it's very credible. And there's no reason to poo-poo it. It is what it is. And I'm glad they put this data out every year because it's an extremely useful reference point for those of us who write about what's really happening in the real world.
But Irina, why Exxon and international agency, they have so different predictions? What's the reason? Sound, Irina.
You're muted.
Sorry, because they have different agendas, basically. Or rather, now, obviously, Exxon is interested in oil and gas continuing to dominate the energy mix, but Exxon is also grounding these forecasts in reality. The world population is growing and standards are hopefully rising, and energy demand will increase, which is something that the IEA also acknowledges. But unlike Exxon, the International Energy Agency is a transition pusher, effectively, and it interprets everything through the lens of the energy transition and what they want to happen rather than what could realistically happen. And this is why they're forecasting things like, okay, so this year oil demand will hit a record. They said this last in their August monthly report, but then it will quickly, start declining, and it will peak. I can't remember. No, I think it will peak in a few years and start declining sharply afterwards, because we will have built so much wind and solar. What I basically want to say is that the IEA's forecasts are not so much grounded in reality, in what is realistically possible, but in what governments want to happen and are trying to make happen. But currently they're failing, and chances are they will continue failing in the future as well, while Exxon is being more realistic.
Yeah, interesting. Tammy, and about the coal. Exxon says that coal dropped dramatically, but they do consider China, Africa, and other parts of the world that using intensive coal.
Well, if I could just clarify, Exxon says that coal demand will decrease in the OECD countries, but in the non-OECD and Asia, they're looking at a 40% increase in coal.
Oh,
So if you look at their chart, that's what they're showing, is that it'll go up in Asia and non-OECD, but drop in the OECD. And of course, because they're a natural gas producer, there's several instances in the report where they said natural gas is a great replacement for coal. It's less carbon intensive and so on. And so, of course, they're going to say that, and then of course say maybe you should invest more in natural gas and oil production. And I think that's one of the key aspects of this report. It's not just the realistic scenarios that they're running, but also their call for more investment. In the report they say, and it's an industry standard, that there's on average a 7% depletion in the fields, and so you need to keep doing enhanced oil recovery or other different things to keep the reservoir pressure up and whatnot. And you need investment to do that. And you need investment to look at other areas where you would like to see oil and gas production either be sustained or increase as these other reservoirs deplete. And I think it's a bit disconcerting that you have the UN sending a letter to Saudi Arabia and various banks saying stop investing in Saudi Aramco because they're bad for the climate. And so on the one hand, Exxon is saying, okay, we're going to need more investment. And on the other hand, you have the UN and other organizations telling banks and insurers to stop investing in oil and gas companies. So, maybe the IEA projections are based on the idea, as Irina said, they really want this to happen, that the investment drops significantly, that they not only crush demand, but they crush production.
different agendas, as Irina said.
Yes.
Yes,
Very different.
very different. Irina, in the case of Australia that are replacing coal, they are able to replace coal in Australia?
Well, apparently not, because there was this recent news report, a warning from their energy regulator, who said that two states, and these are not even the states with the biggest buildup of wind and solar, these two states are at risk of blackouts, because let me try to remember how exactly he said it, but it was very euphemistic. He said because of decreased reliability of coal generation.
Yeah.
How does the reliability of coal generation decrease, except if you're retiring coal plants faster than you're building alternatives that could provide dispatchable power? So I'm thinking probably this is the reason for the danger of blackouts, because as in many other countries in Europe and in North America, hydrocarbon generation capacity is being put out of commission much faster than replacement is being built, for
Yeah.
no logical reason, but
Right.
for ideological reasons.
And David, is it similar to Germany case for nuclear plants?
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, my energy absurdity of the day today is about references Germany's decision earlier this year to shut down its 3 remaining coal plant or nuclear plants. And the fact that it's the result now is that Germany's import of electricity from other countries has just skyrocketed since that announcement was made. And along with it is the cost of energy to its industrial sector, and Germany's economy is rapidly deindustrializing as a result of all this. And so now the German government has made the irrational decision to tell RWE, its big energy giant company that invests in wind and coal and everything else, is tearing down a wind farm so that it can expand its lignite coal mining operation in the central part of the country. And that's because Germany needs to burn more coal in power generation to help try to reduce its imports of electricity from surrounding countries at very high prices. And this is the kind of unintended consequence you get when you have the government trying to pick winners and losers in the energy space and making literally insane decisions, like the decision to shut down those 3 nuclear power plants for no good reason whatsoever other than irrational fear stoked by climate alarmists. That's my rant for today.
It's a confusion, several different directions, each country going to a different way. So what's the logic? What's missing in terms of world strategy?
Common
Realism?
sense.
Common sense. There you go.
Yeah, common sense and realism. And I think what's interesting is that with respect to the EU, they said when the Ukraine thing first happened that they were going to ask for every country to reduce demand by 15%, overall energy demand. And now they've extended that through 2024. So it's 15% reduction every year. So, okay, so if Germany reduced 15% last year, and I think they were close to 8 or something, and that was mostly due to their industrial base having to wind down, and it to 3/4 of it was wound down, and it takes a lot to bring that back up. And they're supposed to extend for another, I don't know if it's another 15% or maintain that 15% reduction. I don't know. It seems like it's an add-on to destroy this demand. But then I hear, oh, well, Germany's doubling down on wind and solar. But then why do they have to import so much? If they're building all this and they're investing in interconnections, does that not mean that it's unreliable and therefore they have to go elsewhere to feed their just doing a reduction in consumption, not even maintaining it, but to reduce it? It's bizarre and unrealistic.
Bizarre, yeah. And while they're supposedly, greening their own energy mix, most of that power they're importing is generated from coal, natural gas, and burning wood.
And they still have to hope for warm winters. I just saw this as a comment somewhere online by an expert that Europe needs to keep hoping for at least 2 or 3 warm winters and no disruptions to global LNG supply in order to be able to avoid blackouts. Yes, this is where we've come to.
Yeah. That's right. LNG is critical coming from the
Absolutely. Yes, it's vital.
Yeah.
Including from Russia, obviously.
Obviously, which is hilarious. It's like,
it's ridiculous.
But David, I think it was either your discussion with Doomberg or Stu Turley's, where Doomberg made a really good point, where the EU is mistaking good luck for brilliant policy decisions. Which I thought was an excellent way to describe it, because they're like, oh, we had a really great winter last year. Look, we're so brilliant, and it's like, no.
That's what they actually did. He's as usual. He's spot on. That's what they did. They patted themselves on the back. We did it. Well, no, you didn't. The weather did it.
The weather did it. Yeah.
But
and it was exactly what I interviewed Dan Jurgen and an expert from Enverus September of last year about the outlook for Europe. And they both talked about the fact that Europe had to have a warm winter to avoid blackouts, particularly Germany, You know, and it's all reverberating from the war in Ukraine and the cutoff of Russian gas. And the same situation exists again this winter. They have to have a warm winter to avoid blackouts. And if there's a cold winter, or even just a major 3 or 4 week cold snap across Europe, Northern Europe, there's going to be a lot of disruption of electricity in Europe, the northern part of the country, because of this unreliable energy mix that they've implemented. And it's all because of government policy. I'm sorry, Armando, I interrupted you there.
No. It was great. Yes, it's a problem of policy, government policy, and different ones. Tom Kirkman.
Tom Kirkman. All right.
Welcome, guy.
Germany increasing wind energy means increasing natural gas power generation to counter the intermittency of wind. Exactly. Yes, sir.
That's what's been happening. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom. Tell me why Exxon is bringing this truth at this time, exactly this time. So because big oil like BP, Total, Petrobras, including, they are totally quiet. Is there a specific reason for that?
Well, I think they're looking for investors. They're looking to say, okay, this is what the way we're seeing the reality shaping up, and up to 2050. We've got fairly robust scenario analysis that is outlining this, but we're going to need investment in order to see this through. And I think in some ways it's to counter this trend to decrease investment in oil and gas companies. And interestingly, I think Shell has come up with something similar, not quite as well-rounded. Yeah, but they're basically suggesting the same thing, that we're going to need investment, and it's a way to sort of counter this movement. And it is a strong movement to stop oil and gas investment.
Yeah.
It didn't help me to bring the absurdities that David is a specialist, but BRUGLE said on May 2021 to stop investments in oil and gas. Nuclear plants in Germany being closed. LNG from the US is an absurdity for me. From my perception, something wrong. So how many wrong positions? Why? It's impossible.
How many mistakes will they make before they learn their lesson? Well, as many as it takes, Armando, because these people who we call governments right now in Europe are so dead set on pursuing their net zero goal, including the IEA, which rejected its own net zero roadmap that you referred to, the one that they issued in 2021. And then a few months later, they said, we need more investments in oil and gas because we don't have enough oil and gas. But to this day, they continue to, mention this net zero roadmap in their reports. We have to do this and that to fulfill the goals we set in our net zero roadmap, even if they know it's not working, even if they themselves, the people who compile these reports, actually say we need more oil and gas right now, after they said we can just stop boosting oil and gas production because we won't be needing so much. They contradict themselves, and they keep on contradicting themselves because nobody's saying anything to them, because nobody's calling them out except people like us on social media, on podcasts,
right,
and things like that. But there is no one in a position of power that challenges this agenda. So of course they will keep making as many mistakes as they feel they can afford.
Yeah.
It will be a very, very harsh awakening if they continue down this road, our brave governments.
They will continue doubling down on all of this until voters force them to change.
Even as it gets proven time and time again that it's not working.
Because it's a political agenda. It's a leftist political agenda at its base, and that's what leftist political movements always do.
Actually, no, I was thinking about this the other day. One thing that the totalitarians in the Soviet bloc did right, they kept energy cheap. We had heavily subsidized energy, but it was cheap
You're breaking
because
up.
they knew.
Whoops.
Am I? Sorry.
You broke up for a second there. Go back about 10 seconds and repeat. Yeah. We didn't get everything you said. So
I was saying, was it just you or did everyone hear me? Well, anyway, I was saying that the totalitarians did this right, got this right. They kept energy cheap because that's how you keep your people relatively happy from a material point of view. They never did this to energy. They never made it prohibitively expensive. And this is what the new totalitarians apparently did not learn. They did not study this.
Takes time.
So that they are just, it's a suicidal direction.
Yeah. We have 3 or 4 comments here. Please, first
is
one.
Germany currently receiving any pipeline gas from Africa? Or are they relying only on LNG from the U.S. and Qatar? Thank you, SRB. That's a great question. I know that there is a planned pipeline on the books that may even be underway, construction from North Africa through France and up into the northern part of Europe, but it certainly is not completed. And so there's no, I don't think there's any pipeline gas going into Germany from Africa. Tammy, Irina?
No, it's too far away.
Yeah.
I think it's Spain and Italy who get it. Not sure about Spain.
Right, it would go into Spain through France, and I mean, I know there's a pipeline kind of in the planning stages that would do that. But
they take forever.
Yeah.
I don't know. That I'll have to look at that, and I'll put it on LinkedIn in the comments.
There's another one from
Seth Cressy. Thank you, Seth. The energy prices in EU make it difficult to compete with global products.
Yeah.
Light at the end of the tunnel or time to bring plants back to the U.S.
No. Reshoring.
Well,
yeah, that would be a wonderful goal to reshore to the U.S., but
it would be possible if it was a different administration. But this administration is as hostile to actual production of goods as the EU.
Yes.
So
very sad.
But
Sure. Go ahead.
That next comment is very similar to Irina's, and I just wanted to say to Irina, she's absolutely right, because the totalitarians kept the energy cheap, not just to keep its citizens happy, but also it was called the oil weapon, where they flooded the European market with cheap oil in order to supposedly get them dependent on the Soviet Union and so on. And they also saw it as a means to create production. Energy is production. And if you don't have reasonably priced energy, that means that the items you're producing are expensive.
Sure.
So
sell them.
Right. And so here we have a green ideology is so in its belief system. And part of it is actually changing how we live. It's changing our quality of life, our standard of living. And a lot of it is reducing consumption of everything. And if you have plentiful, reliable, cheap energy, then you wouldn't be changing necessarily that lifestyle in the manner in which the people who believe in the green ideology want it to be.
Yeah, it's crucial to keep that in mind, what Tammy just said. These unintended consequences that we talk about are actually goals of this plan, because the goal ultimately is to reduce your standard of living and your consumption of energy and make you live smaller, less prosperous lives, because prosperity and moving around consumes energy and creates emissions. You have to remember that is the ultimate goal of all this, to understand their real motivations.
My God.
Tim Reed. Thank you, Tim. You assume the consequences of their decisions are, just exactly.
There you go.
Yes, Tim, exactly. I'm sorry. Perhaps the effects are intended. It's just the agenda is a false flag.
Exactly.
Okay. You put it better than I did.
Another one, Andrea Bragini.
When do you believe this notion of forced energy transition will come to an end? Thank you, Andre. I will let Irina and Tammy address that.
Irina, go first.
Well, the mistakes become too many. And when people clearly state they are not having any more of that, I can't say when this will happen, but apparently we're more patient than I expected. So it's
Yeah,
not
it's
good.
Takes 20 years.
yeah. When people
Yeah.
start to when people start to feel the pain, and like in Canada with the carbon tax, they're already feeling the pain of high grocery prices, high cost of living, unaffordable housing, all these different things. And then to have our environment minister, who is, I believe, a closet communist, to go around in China, when he's in China, berating a Canadian oil company for wanting to keep its go back to its core business, and saying, well, we need a hard emissions cap because you're not playing the game anymore. And meanwhile, he's in there in China. China is doubling down on coal, but that's okay.
Right.
Bad Canada. And, Canadians are suffering, and I don't know what it will take for what level of suffering before people will be upset enough to say, no, we're drawing a line, no farther.
Interesting. Crazy, I hear.
Oh, that was, I think, when Irina's
Yeah.
wasn't
Yeah.
going through properly.
Yeah.
How's the Energy Charter Treaty influencing decision making, even those that make no sense in terms of climate goals? Nawaz, MRICS. I think MRICS may be an acronym for a company, maybe, or I don't know.
Maybe.
Well, I can address that Energy Charter Treaty. So
Yeah.
the Energy Charter Treaty was originally designed so that governments would be held to account if they suddenly changed legislation, and energy companies had invested a lot and then were caught holding the bag, so to speak. And a number of the top European countries have withdrawn from the Energy Charter Treaty so that they can no longer be sued by companies for arbitrarily changing legislation that will create stranded assets. So how is it influencing decision making? They're pulling out. They're pulling out the European governments so that they don't have to pay up for doing these arbitrary changes and forcing the energy transition.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good. Texas.
Victor,
Texas again. Victor.
Texas ready for a harsh winter. Can I answer that one?
Yeah,
It's
sure.
a very easy answer. No,
No.
no, because we haven't built enough dispatchable thermal capacity over the last decade. Our generators in this state refuse to invest. It's not that they can't or they're not allowed to. It's that they refuse to invest in new thermal capacity. The legislature passed new incentives this year to help subsidize their costs that they always whine about doing it, in order to try to get more dispatchable thermal energy capacity built in this state over the next 5 years. But as we go into this winter, if we have a cold winter or we have another winter storm, we're not going to be able to avoid blackouts. We've barely been able to get through summer. ERCOT has been struggling day after day after day. And our grid is very tired. Our gas plants and coal plants have been having to work way over time of what they normally would be working this summer in order to keep the lights on. And winter is always harder than summer in Texas on our grid. And so we lack the thermal capacity to get through it. I know no other way to say it. I invested personally, my wife and I, in a gas backup generator for our home, just getting ready for this winter. And I'm really very concerned about it.
My God.
Thank you for the question.
Pseudoscientist agrees with Tim and asks, they pretend to make mistakes.
But it is planned destruction, controlling the means of production, globalism. Yes, exactly. That's exactly what it is.
They already have that. Why make people poor? That's the thing I can't understand. I repeatedly bring it up because I
they're
can't
easier to
understand
control.
it. If you want to make money out of something, you need people to be able to spend on this something and things in general. But if you make them poorer, then they won't be able to spend, which leads me to what you said, David, that perhaps the reducing emissions at all costs is the goal, which means they're even crazier than we thought.
It's not about money, I don't think. For some people it
It's
is,
even
but
worse. That's
yeah,
even
it's
worse.
worse. It's worse. Because you can at
Yeah.
least
About
understand
control.
greed, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Tammy, it's for you, Canada.
Yay.
Polite
A polite
population.
population. Yeah.
Uh,
Too polite. Too polite.
uh,
At some
Polite
but
for
at
its own
some
good,
point,
yeah.
at some point there has to be a line that's drawn, and I think people are kind of, they're getting there, but I don't know, it requires more. If I could do a plug here for brugle.org has a lot of really great natural gas data, oil data, and I'm looking at their natural gas imports into the EU, and they show the different pipelines going in and where it's going into the EU. So if people want to have, to look at what those stats are, that's a really good website to look at, because they bring in a lot of different EU data and global data, and they're fairly reliable.
Is it BRUGLE?
It's BRUEGEL.org.
Okay.
So I can type it here.
yeah, sure.
They do this because the East cannot hear the West unless the leaders destroy everything. The Red Guard. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what
I
that
don't
means
quite understand.
exactly.
Yeah.
Heart equal beat.
Let's see.
They do this because the East cannot hear the West unless the leaders destroy everything. I don't know what that. I'm sorry. I'm not sure what that's saying.
Let's see. Let's see. One.
With the world going crazy, West Virginia is a good place to hide out. The West Virginia population has doubled down on thermal and recently legalized nuclear. Good for West Virginia. West Virginia is a thought leader. It's quickly becoming an industrial safe haven. Good. Let's all move there.
Is Democrat
Except-
or Republican?
I'm fine right here. We've got
Heavily
coal, we've got
Republican.
nuclear.
Trump won West Virginia by 34% of the vote in 2020. It's the most Republican state in the country.
Unfortunately, one of the bureaucrats from West Virginia is on Buttigieg's little transportation committee that's going to ban cars or whatever.
And what's the conclusion we can take? Exxon is right.
I think Exxon's righter than most anybody else, probably. Yeah, that's my belief.
Except us, of course.
Yeah, except us.
We are right too.
Yes.
Well, I would sum up by saying the future is uncertain, and they're like David says, they're probably more right than others, but you never know what craziness governments will do that will throw a monkey wrench into all of this. So
Unpredictable. Yes.
unpredictable.
Yeah, it's very unpredictable. I agree with that.
Thank you so much. It was a great
Thanks.
conversation today, this Monday.
Thank you. And thanks for everybody who
Thanks for the
chimed in
comment.
with comments and questions.
Yeah.
No true
Thank you.
Scotsman.
One more here.
Have you looked at the Dallas Fed's 2022 survey on oil supply? I think I did earlier this year, but I don't remember. I don't remember exactly what it said.
Great. Have a great week. Thank you.
You too.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.